And the question that I think is legitimately raised is, you know, did somebody come in and make some biological adjustments that cause these huge uh, shifts, both in evolution and eventually in population?
It's really good to see you again. I love talking to you, and it's been a little while. I think I don't know when the last time we spoke like this was.
Don't remember. It has been a while.
Yeah, and you've been up to lots.
Maybe back to the COVID era.
Yeah, I think possibly. I remember we've
Uh,
had a lot of back and forth with emails and been keeping up with
but
exciting adventures. So, welcome to Viking Superpowers. My audience is partly from the people I had previously with Portal Superpowers, and a lot of them are people that you kindly directed towards me when you gave a shout out to your Special Forces community and other folks. And so hopefully they'll find this video again. And my channel has been going really well since I've changed it to the Viking Superpowers, still incorporating all the paranormal, getting heaps of people, military and ex-military from Scandinavia, writing to me and telling me their stories, and people who actually are right on the spot in areas where I've been exploring the Viking sagas, and people who actually live right in those places are writing and saying, yes, I've been researching this for years, and I've got quite an interesting community already building. And
it was interesting. I was just looking at possibly sailing out of Tromso to Reykjavik. So
really,
possibility later this year. Yeah.
oh wow, fantastic. Well, if you need a cheap translator, I can come with you. I'll and a bodyguard. I could sort of do both.
Yeah. Hope we're not in danger. The
No,
last time I was in Tromso was in a February. We were heading there and went up north in the Arctic Circle, chasing the Northern Lights.
ah,
And it was really amazing to me that, again, it was February, how much ice there wasn't. I mean, it was most of it was basically pretty clear. And the water, the same with the water all the way through, up again over the northern loop. I forget the town that's way up there, but it stopped and there was some snow on the ground and that. But I just expected to see more ice,
mm,
like in the water, and not at all like what had been in Antarctica. It certainly wasn't anything like that.
yeah. Well, I'm very much a subtropical person, and going to Alaska is the first time I've actually seen ice in the sea or been near a glacier. So yeah, I was pretty impressed with the amount of snow in Alaska, even though it was nice weather when we were there. But yeah, how exciting! So when you said how do you spell that Norwegian town? Truso, is it?
uh, Tromso, Trompso.
It's a name I know, but I can't quite place it. Like,
Uh,
how far up north is it?
Pretty good. It's probably more than halfway up the west coast, and it's actually had looked at it before because they actually go diving with orcas there.
Oh, really? Wow.
And in the winter, they come into that. There's a big bay and a huge airfield there. But yeah, it's interesting place. I was
Yeah.
also interested in the probably a digression, but the aquaculture the farming, ship farming that was, fish farming is going on in the area there. And actually somewhat to the detriment of the environment because they hold these huge pens, feed lots and lots of fish, and they poop and it goes down and basically kills the fauna at the bottom of the ocean there. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Unexpected consequences.
yes.
Have you looked into the Swedish UFO phenomenon, those sort of phenomena of quite well recorded Swedish
I'm
government?
thinking, yeah, I'm thinking of the name of the lights that are there. Yeah, we've certainly heard about it, and of course they've been filmed for a long period of time.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things that's fairly reliable, i.e., you are going to see phenomena there.
Yeah. Do you have any idea of any conclusions? Like, do they think they actually?
No, unfortunately, no.
No.
No. As you know, or probably know, that Chris Bledsoe case that I've mentioned in the last book and that, and I've heard from Chris today, as a matter of fact, because that's an example of something that's ongoing, and particularly when the orb phenomena. And yeah, he seems to be able to have some kind of, conscious contact, call them in, or them responding to thoughts and things, such as the one that I saw when I was with him. But that's where I think most of the stuff is going to be headed. It looks like, and by the way, Brandon Fugel, who owns Skinwalker Ranch, kind of agrees and says, looks like what we're seeing is some attempts at communication. And I say our problem is we just don't have a Rosetta Stone that can tell us what the hell it all means, but it's certainly happening.
Well, I'm sure you've got strong opinions about this. I've always wondered why there is such an absolute denial of ESP and telepathy and these sort of abilities in the scientific mainstream, at least the way it comes across on, Wikipedia. I know it's not the Encyclopedia Britannica, but generally you always get this consensus. And, from your incredible long history, I know you must have copped this all your life, people who doubt these things are real. But that seems a major problem to me, that we're not cultivating the abilities in people to be able to perhaps communicate in the way that's needed.
You mentioned something I'd like to send up a flag on, though, and that's Wikipedia. And specifically, and I didn't know this until fairly recently, but there is actually a skeptics group, I'm going to think of the name, who they got about 300 people, and anything that goes up in the sci phenomena world, they jump on it. And that includes my bio and things like that. And one of the things that surprised me, because I heard about it, and I went in, I hadn't done a vanity check in a long time. So I was collecting my stuff in my bio that I think I know. And a few hours later, I noticed that it was down. So I went back in and started, and they were erasing it in real time.
Wow.
So be very careful when you look at any psi phenomena, because the skeptics group, uh, skeptic something of Wikipedia. I mean, it's got a formal name of a group, and they are out just to destroy any information in this area.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because Rupert Sheldrake, who, I wouldn't say he's a mate of mine, but we've written over the years and
But
times. I find him very, very interesting man.
yeah,
He put out a uh, sort of an alert on his Facebook page about exactly that. And there's another group that were looking for people who are prepared to fight back against this skeptics collaboration, and they boil my blood, those people. Because now I'm into an even more pseudo-scientific thing, like, psi phenomenons, yeah, sure, that's pseudoscience. Once you get into paleocontact and ancient aliens and such, it's another step of wackiness according to these people. But and they just, of course, eviscerate anything that goes up about that. And
by the way, I remember the name of the group. It's the Skeptical Gorillas of Wikipedia.
I actually,
the name alone ought to scare you.
In my lineage of Wing Chun Kung Fu, our grandmaster is Chu Shong Tin. You and I have talked about him.
Right.
Very close student of Master Yip Man, and somebody who hates our lineage and hates our grandmaster took his Wikipedia page down, and it was basically permanent, and of course we're all really upset about it internationally. So I took it upon myself to try and see what I could do. So I just thought, I've got to do this through their channel. So I found how you could talk to people and just put the case to them. And they gave me a long list of things I had to do. So I just step by step methodically went through it, and I was helped by people around the world because, nobody had really put much of an effort into making his page correct by Wikipedia standards of, giving credit from published articles and whatever. And it took about a year, but I managed to get it up, and I actually got a trophy, like a wall plaque from the Wing Chun Association for fighting back against the evil Wing Chun haters.
Well, I guess what most people don't realize is this threat is very organized. As I said, what stunned me was when I found them taking the stuff down in real time.
Yeah.
So they've got an AI search engine of some kind in there, and because I had not been on it in months, maybe years. And like I say, within hours, the first part's down. And the other thing that they did is anything that was positive, because as you know, I work in a couple of different worlds, and what I call the straight world and the weird world, and have a number of accolades in the straight world, and they pulled all that stuff down too.
Wow. Well, it might be time to start pushing back against this people. My little bit of experience made me realize that you can fight back, but you've got to do it by the book, because Wikipedia can just be got at by anybody. They get around it. If you get a group of 300, it's sort of it's David versus Goliath. But if you follow the Wikipedia system, they can set it in stone and go, no, nobody can touch this now. Yeah. We believe this is the truth. And you're more than, well accredited. You've got an incredible list of accreditations that they can't refute. So, yeah.
But they do.
Yeah.
And then what they say is, well, you just have to follow the rules. And of course, I think you found out next to impossible if it took a year to get reality back up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was quite a fight. But anyway, all of us who matter know that you're somebody very special and credible, and that's why I'm delighted. I consider you my friend. We haven't met face to face, but we've got to know each other a bit, and I'm delighted that you've come back, because a lot of my followers are really into you. They think you're something, especially after that Sean Ryan interview. A lot of people have sat up and noticed you again. And
happy to do it. Where do you want to go tonight?
Well,
it's nighttime here. I guess daytime there.
Yeah. Well, I want to start off asking your opinion about the ancient alien hypothesis, and of course I realize that we mightn't be talking about extraterrestrials, but that whole idea, which you'd be right across, of advanced people from maybe other civilizations or cultures, maybe earthbound, maybe from our solar system, manipulating the human race in ancient days, and particularly for me, the literary side of it, that idea that the Bible and many religious texts and myths and legends do preserve some real memory of strange phenomena. So I just leave it up to you to say whatever you want. But
Well, obviously, kind of complex topic. However, when you look at history, and I would say, I think our notion of history of the human race is sorely lacking and certainly not right. I might mention, since we've talked last, probably heard of Göbekli Tepe
yes,
in Italy.
remember you,
We were at Göbekli Tepe. By the way, we just before we went was when the major earthquake had hit, and Göbekli Tepe was literally at the epicenter of
right.
that quake, and almost nothing happened to it. However, while we were there, we were able to go down to Karahan Tepe, which has been more recently discovered. It was just being opened at that time. I can say it looks like it's bigger than Göbekli Tepe, covers a huge area, and they're guessing 2 millennia earlier.
Wow.
And so you go in, well, who built all of this? And I see the same thing being true in Central and South America, as the more with LiDAR systems that were able to go in and look below the surface, the trees and all of that, you're seeing remnants of very large civilizations. You go, where did this come from? And I know I was in ECA a number of years ago. This was in Peru. And you've probably heard of the ECHO lines, or the Nazca lines that are ECHO's the city that's nearby, and asked them about that. And of course, they came out with the Out of Africa series, which I am not a fan of, but that they had come across the Bering Straits and down, and then Ice Age closed things off, and it's changed over time. In my view, that does not account for the size of the population for areas like the Mato Grosso, where you had cities that appear to be in hundreds of thousands. And if you go through, as we have throughout Central America and Belize and all of the countries along there, El Salvador, Guatemala, there's all these little hills. And what you find out is basically every hill is a temple. And I mean, they just haven't had the money to go in and excavate all of them. But this is certainly indicative of very large populations that we just really can't account for, which I think gets back to your earlier issue. And if you look at evolution, we have something called speciation. And what that means is you go along and all of a sudden you see a substantial leap, and then it goes on, as opposed to the, gradual incline. And, the question that I think is legitimately raised is, did somebody come in and make some biological adjustments that cause these huge shifts? Both in evolution and eventually in population.
Do you know of any eminent biologists who have sort of written about this, or?
That's a good question. No, I mean, I would have to go back and search that. I don't know of anybody who's following up on that. I mean, a lot of this was personal observation. I remember being in the nunnery in Yucatan in Mexico, and looking, and what I noticed on the frescoes there were faces And this is what, a couple thousand years old max, maybe 1,000 to two. And yet you saw representations of all of the races, and you would say, how would they have come in contact with what was clearly African? Let alone, I know there's some stuff on the Oriental that suggests that there were trade routes that went back and forth there. But yeah, I mean, like I say, human history is not what we thought it was.
Yeah, well, that's something that I've always found exciting about you, is that you're not just somebody like me who's out here got theories in his lounge, but you've been right in there with the actual government and with the CIA and, you know, people that we consider the secret governments, you know, the people who know things.
Well, I'll tell you, the government has nothing to do with you know, the things I've been saying. These are my personal beliefs,
Yeah.
not that of the military, and certainly not CIA.
When you talked about speciation, you're talking about sudden unaccountable changes in the general characteristics of an organism.
Right.
Yeah, and there's no sort of missing link. Like there is a missing link. It's like,
But you see this dramatic change in a relatively short period of time, which natural evolution would not account for. But, you know, clearly a huge biological, and of course, ancient alien analogy is that, okay, did we come from apes? When we know that chimpanzees, for instance, what, 98% DNA? So the question becomes, was there something in there that, you know, increased that?
yeah,
It'd certainly be a long-term experiment. Not sure how successful it was.
yeah. I think it was because I'm a science fiction reader and you know, I've written a science fiction novel and I'm always thinking like that. It occurred to me one day that the Adam and Eve story was like Eden was like a big lab somewhere, and Adam and Eve, or that, you know, they sort of became self-aware, realized they were naked, and, you know, started to know good and evil, so to speak, as the Bible account says. And then they pretty much just got out the back door one day when somebody's putting out the rubbish, you know, maybe just escaped into the forest. And that seems to me to account for a lot of our vulnerability, because we're not.
But remember, then they met people and married. I mean, you know, we say, wait, where did that other group come from? And I find this is particularly true in the out of Africa. And we talk about Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon as if in the European sector. And if you also see branches that supposedly went up into Central Asia and across, maybe even down into Australia. That's part of the theory. And then they meet the Denisovians, and you go, wait, where did they come from?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, exactly. And it really does point to our overall ignorance. Like you said before, it was perfect that, you know, there's all this archaeology waiting to be done, but there's not the funding, there's not the resource.
no.
And I've always felt that in all these scientific areas, you know, people say there's no such thing as telepathy. Is that right? And who has done this study? Like, has somebody studied millions of people? Have they gone to every single person claiming telepathy and found out whether they're sane and the exact circumstances? It's not treated seriously. And the same as this, all this ancient archaeology, and as you're talking about strange speciation, where's the resources for it? You know, you can't say you know much if you've only got a few people doing it.
Well, I run into this, particularly right now when I want to talk what the status on UFO is at the moment. And the problem is, it's the reality is eating our lunch. You know, so when you look at the funding issues, you know, exploring these issues are not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. particularly when you get into archaeological digs and places, and now ones where you have the, social instability in many of these areas, thanks to particularly drug cartels and things like that. So the areas that you need to get to, and it would be terribly expensive. And of course, they come up with, it's kind of like a so what, okay, so you learn something new. How does that affect my life today?
Well, that sort of neatly goes into my next question, which is that idea of craft retrieval. And I know, as far as I know, David Grush in his testimony to Congress didn't really specifically state that there was ancient retrievals, but I've picked that up from different commentators that they weren't just contemporary crashes of craft since the 40s. They were like, and there's even those Italian, you'd know that story about Mussolini and some crashes in Italy back in the 30s.
That is very dubious, and I've got some papers on that. That is one, and one of the problems with Grish's commentary is he starts with that as if true.
Right.
And I think many of us are pretty convinced that that one definitely is off the charts.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the problems we have now is, of course, you have the official testimony that you're referring to, the congressional testimony of Grush and the pilots, and they're absolutely straight, and they're very good because they only say this is what I saw, and they're not extrapolating. The Grush's statement is a great extrapolation. Nothing has come about to support that. I mean, there's been no further evidence. And of course, you had this big spike in local and congressional interest where you had the studies go, which has basically dropped off. And I've even seen in the chatter, if you will, the researchers are the ones who would come forward complaining like, gee, they don't return my phone calls anymore. So I think the problem there is just that, again, Ukraine, Gaza, the economy are things that are eating our lunch today. And this is not on the priority list. I used to have a chart that says, top things that they have to do. And when, the way the priority goes within the government, it says, and then you've got, UFOs, and it is way below the cut for funding.
Yes, I can understand that. I can't imagine what it's like to try and run a huge country or even a little country like Australia. But do you give any credit?
Country.
Well, it's not.
Australia's a continent. Come on. That's one of my surprises. It was flying across it is how long it takes to fly across takes longer to fly across Australia than across the US.
Yeah. Well, you should try driving across it. It's feel like you're on Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that this is one of those subjects where it's either nothing much or it's just the hugest thing possible. Like, that eminent Israeli, I think he was a general, Hayam Eshed.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. I forget the name, but.
Yeah, I think it's Hayam Eshed. I think that's how you say it. But he came out saying that, and he's about your age. He's not shockingly old. He's a man with a distinguished career, and people were saying, "Oh, he's gone a bit potty" or something like that. But he was stating straight out that there's bases on Mars in collaboration with alien entities, and they've got
that kid sounds regular crazy. there was at the SSE last year, a guy was giving a presentation, Courtney Brown, I'll go ahead and name him, because he had written a article for the Journal of the Scientific Society for Scientific Exploration. And I came out and I even wrote in my last book, I'm the guy who stopped it, because, and it had to do with this alien bases on Mars, and his thing was that, you know, the flights slip out of Cape Canaveral or Cape Kennedy all the time. And you go, no, when they launch at Kennedy, half of Florida knows.
Yeah,
And
right.
you start looking at what would the logistic requirements be to maintain that, even with terraforming aside. Yeah, you know, the reality just gets you, but you find people making it. And unfortunately, when you get into the ultra crazy, there was another guy, ex-CIA, who was doing similar thing and saying they keep young children there, part of the pedophile
Oh,
base for the ultra elites, and you go,
yeah.
and you can't wonder why people look at that and just throw up their hands, and you know, how do we even begin to grapple with abject nonsense, which is to the detriment. This is one of my points, is this is not benign. This is to the detriment of the kinds of topics that you and I want to discuss and further.
Exactly. Yes, there's that sort of background chatter of extreme unproven things. And I even feel a little embarrassed doing the sort of thing I'm doing with the Viking sagas, in that I'm not saying this is real. I'm not saying that I could be completely wrong with it, but coming at it from a point of view of not having ever thought about that at all, seeing what my friend, Paul Anthony Wallace, and his Italian, you know, world-class ancient Hebrew translators finding in the Old Testament texts, in the ancient Hebrew, seems to be indicating that there really was some kind of flying crafts and powers and abilities and rulers who were doing things. And then I sort of just thought, I wonder if it's in the Viking stories. And the funny thing is, I was never interested particularly in the myths. I just like stories about, Viking adventurers, sagas about farmers who went off to war and gained glory and came back and married some beautiful woman and got himself in trouble. And I just liked all, down to earth Viking sort of things. And then the Odin, Thor, and all that just seemed a bit twee. And then I started looking at it from this Paleocontact point of view and being able to read Old Norse, and with a bit of dictionary help, I sort of started going, actually, I'm seeing similar things in here. I'm words mistranslated and sort of hiding what is pretty obvious what it's saying. Yeah, so we'll see how we go. I'll be sending you a copy of my book when it gets done.
Well, hope we get it out the door. As I've offered, if you need a blurb, we'll certainly do that.
I'd be delighted.